Shalom. Shalom, shalom. Giving honor and praise to the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. This presentation is being brought to you June 11th, 2018. My name is Yeshiah Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This presentation, brothers and sisters, is concerning the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 1. Shalom, giving honor and praise to the Creator and Maker of heaven and earth. The portion called Shemot means names. It picks up after the death of Joseph when the Israelites are still in the land of Egypt. This concerns what happened to the Israelites while in the land of Egypt during the enslavement, in the prelude to their departure from Egypt. So this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 through verse 10. Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. Reuben, meaning behold the son. Shimon, meaning hearing. Levi, said in Hebrew as Lewi, meaning joined. And Judah, said in Hebrew as Yahudah, meaning the Most High is praised. Issachar, said in Hebrew as Yissaskar, meaning there is a reward or one that is hired. Zebulun, said in Hebrew as Zebulun, meaning dwelling. And Benjamin, said in Hebrew as Benjamin, meaning son of the right side or son of the right hand. Dan, said in Hebrew as Dan, meaning judge. And Naphtali, said just as that, meaning my contention or my wrestling. Gad, said in Hebrew as God, which means troop. And Asher, said in Hebrew as such, Asher, which means happiness. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob was 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. So this, brothers and sisters, is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right, for Reuben, Shimon, Lewi, Yehuda, Yissaskar, Zebulun, Ubenyamin, Dan, wa Naphtali, Gad, wa Asher. All right, so those were the sons of Jacob that went into the land of Egypt, and as stated, it says that Joseph was already in Egypt. Next slide. Continued. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all their generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and it come to pass, that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. So we see right here that there was a new pharaoh that came up in the land of Egypt that did not know Joseph. Now, a lot of people, a lot of scholars will say that he not knowing Joseph means that he didn't recognize the greatness that Joseph has done. Or he really did not know Joseph because they did not want to have Joseph remembered by taking his name out of the Egyptian records. So this is just something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. So what it says he is showing nationalism in verse 9. And he said unto his people, so the scriptures lets us know that all people are not considered all one and the same. All right. He said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on and let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. So the Pharaoh at that time, we want to point out later on, had a reason why he was worried, you understand, about war coming to them and the Israelites joining on with the enemies of the Egyptians. All right. So this is just something we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. Thank you. The matter of Avaris, names and map. According to Redford in his book, Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in Ancient Times, he stated that during the Middle Kingdom, it can be deduced that the Asiatic population in Egypt outgrew the native Egyptian stock. So, brothers and sisters, if we take our own time, all right, and go into the scriptures in Exodus chapter 1, verse 11, let's see what we read in that particular regard. All right, Exodus chapter 1, verse 11, and it says this. Therefore, they did set over them taskmaster to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom Ra'am says. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. So now, right here, it says from verse 9, going all the way down for a reason to verse 12, that one, it says the children of Israel were more in the land. So this is why I cited the historian there by the name of Redford in his book, Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in Ancient Times, where he stated that in the Middle Kingdom, it can be deduced that the Asiatic population, the Israelites were part of the Asiatic people. The Egyptians were to refer to in English terminologies, if you were to translate the Egyptian terminologies to English, they will refer to the Israelites as part of the Asiatics. So, brothers and sisters, I want to pay close attention to the map that you see right here, Avaris. Avaris in the Delta was the capital of the Hyksos kings of the second intermediate period. Their fortified city was built over a middle kingdom town they had captured. So Avaris, we see right here, in this particular regard, it was built over that. The middle kingdom and what they refer to in geography as strata. So the middle kingdom strata is beneath the aspect of what happened with the Hyksos. So now, getting into the timing of the Exodus, you'll begin to see, brothers and sisters, by them consistently trying to look always at Dynasty 18 and Dynasty 19, they seem to say that there's no correlation about the Exodus and the dynasties of the New Kingdom. But what I'm trying to present, brothers and sisters, in this particular regard, is that a lot of Egyptologists, a lot of historians and geographers have been digging in the wrong timeline, the right place, but the wrong time. And this is why I wanted to point out where it says right here about the Hyksos that their fortified city, if you follow the arrow, was built over a middle kingdom town they had captured. They built a Canaanite style temple and had Palestine style burials there, including burials of horses. They also brought with them superior weapons and Semitic type of pottery, although they were, to a certain extent, Egyptianized. Avaris was captured by Amosed I, who ended Hyksos' rule and founded the 18th dynasty. A lot of historians, brothers and sisters, attempt to look for the Exodus looking at the era from Amos on. But as will be presented in this particular aspect, we want to show that the Middle Kingdom more so is the proper timing of the Israelites being enslaved in the land of Egypt. All right. So let's look at this right here. Names of Avaris in history are Peru Nefer, Rorati, as well as Pi Ramses. So now when we read in the book of Exodus that they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses, we could begin to see that what this is talking about is right here. But Ramses is the later name of it. One must be familiar with the aspect of naming lands and everything like that, and what is referred to as an anachronism. An anachronism is when I am saying that this is the land of Egypt. Meanwhile, the people called the Egyptians didn't call themselves Egyptians, nor did they call that land Egypt. They referred to that land by certain names, such as we read right here, Peru Nefer, Rorati, Pi Ramses, Pi Atum, such as Tasiti. Another one was Waset, another one was Hutharet, and so forth and so on. And as well as the aspect of the famous Tameri, as well as Tamehu. So the point getting back, and as well as Simatawi, which means the unity of the two lands. But we'll get into that a little bit later. What I want to focus on, brothers and sisters, is the fact that when you look at this particular map right here, this shows you the aspect of where the Israelites were at, where they were being enslaved in Lower, aka Northern Egypt. Lower Egypt is Northern Egypt, and South Egypt is called Upper Egypt, all right, due to the flow of the Nile. I want to emphasize again, brothers and sisters, where it says, their fortified city was built over a middle kingdom town. So in order to understand if my hypothesis, for the lack of a better word, is correct that the Israelites were in the middle kingdom of Egypt, you have to remember that they would have then been there before the era of the rise of the Hyksos of Dynasty 15. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Asiatics in Egypt. All right, terminologies regarding the Asiatics, Western Asiatics. I emphasize there, brothers and sisters, when I said Western Asiatics, because I don't want people, no offense intended, when I say Asiatics, to think of East Asia, such as China, such as Central Asia, as Mongolia. No, when I'm saying Asiatic, I'm talking about the area of the Levant and part of what you refer to commonly, yet incorrectly, as the Middle East. All right, so this is something I want to point out for edification purposes. All right, terminologies regarding the Asiatics, Western Asiatics, varied from Setu or Seteyu by some, Amu, Retenu, Jahi. The term Sem is a Greek term from the Hebrew word Shem. Brothers and sisters, the terminology that you get Sem is from the Greek word Shem. Pardon me, the Hebrew word Shem. Sem is Greek transliteration of the Hebrew Shem. So a lot of people, in trying to, unfortunately, wanting to debate the Israelites, attempt to sit there and state that, well, you have it to where Semitic means a mixture and so forth. But you have to understand etymology. This is very important, especially when you're dealing with an African nation and an Asiatic nation. And the transliterations, the translations, the anachronisms, all of that has to be understood when going into this kind of subject matter right here. All right, so one more time. Terminologies regarding the Asiatics, that is to say the Western Asiatics, varied in Egyptian from Setu, Amu, Retenu, and Jahi. These terminologies were not self-appointed. The Egyptians appointed those terminologies to those people that was of the Levant area. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Let's go on to the next slide. Exodus chapter 1, verse 11 and 14. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, and mortar, and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. Or their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. So this is something we want to point out. All right. And in all manner of service in the field, mortar and brick. Mortar and brick. This becomes important in order to sit there and show the timing of the Exodus, because this right here gets into the nitty-gritty of a matter. Let's go on to the next slide. Pithom era Ramses. Pithom is Per Atum in Egyptian. Ramesses is the Avaris, which was before called Pira Amses. It was called Hut Rawet. Hut Rawet, and we're going to get into that as we go along. And the children of Israel made, pardon me, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. All right, let's look at it in the Hebrew. Why? Ya'abidu Mizrayim et Bnei Yisrael Befarek and rigor. The children of Israel was made to serve the Egyptians with rigor. So I have no problem taking the record from the enslaved. I'm not always going to rely solely on the record of the said enslaver. So this is something to point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. Pithom is Per Atum in Egyptian. And as you know, Atum is one of the gods of the Egyptians. Remesis is the Avaris, which was before it. It was called P. Ramses. It was called Hut Waret. This becomes important as we go along. All right. I want to backtrack real quick. All right. Into this. Pardon me for that. This right here is from the tomb of Kemun Hotep that you're looking at. All right. You see it, one of the animals, a gazelle perhaps, with the horns and the colorful garments that the Asiatics or the Amu were known for wearing. All right. If you remember, brothers and sisters, that the Assyrians said of the Israelites that they got from the Israelites multicolored trimmings. The Israelites were known in part for wearing colorful garments. All right. So this is something we want to point out. What you're looking at right here, brothers and sisters, is referred to in part as the Amu. Now, some people refer to the Asiatics as the Hyksos. All right. But the terminology Hyksos, brothers and sisters, comes from the Egyptian term Hekakasu or Haiku Shosret, which means rulers of foreign or mountainous lands. That's what the terminology Hekakasu means. Whereas the terminology Hyksos is the Greek transliteration of Hekakasu, but the Greek transliteration more so leads into the aspect of goat herders or that kind of aspect. Now, a lot of people attempt to snap on the Israelites as far as being goat herders and so forth and so on. But what many people may not realize is that that was a commerce, that was a form of income, that was a form of currency. So, not for nothing, this right here that you see with pointing with the arrow, this animal represented commerce inside of the ancient world. The more of these you had, the more revenue you had. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, next slide. Map of Hut Raret, Avaris, parentheses, Hut Raret, capital of Egypt under the Hyksos. Some say it wasn't a violent invasion, but really a combo of immigration and invasion. We'll deal with the Hyksos more later on in another PowerPoint. Egypt in the second intermediate period. Why did I put this map right here? If you look right here where the arrow is, all right, that's where Avaris is at in lower Egypt. Here we see Gaza, Jerusalem, Megiddo, and Byblos. Why did I make this map? Is for, we're going to have to go back to this later because Byblos is very important in this presentation. All right. What we're doing, brothers and sisters, is showing the evidence externally of what the Bible is talking about in the book of Exodus. All right. So let's go on, if you will, to the next aspect, the next slide. Exodus chapter 1, verse 15 to 17. And the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shifra, and the name of the other Pu'ah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. Brothers and sisters, inside of the Willie Lynch letter, they sat there and spoke about the aspect of having a man behind a woman and scared. But the midwives feared the Most High and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them. So it says, but they saved the men children alive. So they didn't do another aspect in form of abortion. You understand? The Israelite women feared the Most High, respected the Most High, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. A person who can condone slaying an innocent baby does not have the fear or the respect of the Most High God. People who promote abortions do not have the respect and the fear of the Most High God. Brothers and sisters, this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. He was, this particular Pharaoh, attempting to do a form of genocide. Why? Because, as it says earlier in the book of Exodus, he had a fear of war coming to him and the people joining on with the enemies of the Egyptians. So this is something we want to point out. Next slide. The matter of Shifra, Hebrew for beauty. The word Shifra means beauty. All right. The Brooklyn Museum Papyrus 35.1446. This was actually discussed inside of another presentation on the channel called Moreh Yeshiah History Lessons. But let's go on. The Asiatic woman Shefra, she is called Seneb Untes, a weaver of linen. The Asiatic woman Asher, she is called Marik Nub, a weaver of linen. So this right here is in part of the Brooklyn Museum Papyrus. Now, we're going to discuss later on about the Brooklyn Museum Papyrus in more detail concerning these teachings on the book of Exodus. All right, but I just wanted to show the aspect in the era we're speaking of in history. Exodus chapter 1, verse 8 to 22. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing and have saved the men children alive? But the midwives, it says, and the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives came in unto them. Let's remember the part that says the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, but they are lively. The Egyptian women, when you see them even pictured, let's say in the aspect of Ramses or the aspect of Thutmose IV, they're shown for the most part in mostly nude regalia, mostly cladly dressed. Whereas the lively daughters of Israel, the Hebrew women, were not presenting themselves as cladly dressed. Nudity was not part of the daughters of Israel. And this is why even in social media, you will find when a male tries to sexually get at a Hebrew Israelite woman, in most cases, she sit there and blow up his spot. Whereas, no offense intended to the Kemetic side, if you will, you have it to where they have sex gods. You understand? Such as Bastet, such as Bes of ancient Egypt. Some of those things, such as Hathor, some of those were Egyptian sex gods and goddesses. Israel doesn't have a sex god. You understand? So the culture between two is different. So when we see right here, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives came in unto them. So before the midwives were able to supposedly been able to slay the male child, the Hebrew women are already giving birth. You understand? You had it to where even in physical slavery in the Western Hemisphere, where women gave birth and a couple of hours later was right back on the plantation. Therefore, God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty. Brothers and sisters, the Pharaoh knew that if you get rid of the males of a population, you will sit there and have the population destroyed. And it says, because they did not put the males to death, said the people multiplied. So when they want to sit there and have your numbers decreased, you can see why they promote abortion. You can see why they promote just get your career, don't even worry about having any children. They try to take the beauty and the pleasure and the love and the happiness that a mother has away from her by giving you extracurricular activities. And I'm not hating on college, but how is it, brothers and sisters, that you go from high school to college, from college to getting your career, and then by that time, the average woman is in her mid to late 30s, and she feels, well, too late to have any children. Then later on, get a menopause, and then cannot have any children. So this is something that this society over here, so when we read about going into Egypt in ships, we can see why we Israelites say this is like the Egypt, because they want to sit there and annihilate the species off. You understand? It has been noted that the American government has been noted for saying what? Promote homosexuality among the African American or Negro people, so that way the population can decrease, because homosexuality brings death, not life. You understand? But it says these women feared the Most High. Now, when you find women aborting children and proud of it, you have, and I say this no disrespect intended, you are proud to basically have your body and your uterus as a graveyard. And that's not good. You understand? And it came to pass, because the midwives feared the Most High, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. So leave the daughters alive for us, and then kill off the sons. So when they even show you college billboards, they very rarely show black men with black women without a Caucasian standing in between them. You understand? These are things we want to point out for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. The black woman has been known for being the most highly educated. And this is no knock on sisters. It's also the highly unmarried and highly divorced. So I'm not knocking on education. Some of the books I cite externally to the Bible are written by people who teach in colleges. So I'm not saying don't go to school. What I'm saying is this society is programmed to where they want to systematically cut us off. They try to do it in ancient Egypt by brute force, but the mothers was not dealing in that. So the Pharaoh then was compelled in his own way to say, every son that is born, ye shall cast into the river. Kill the males. Next slide. Hebrew linguistics, Pharaoh, Egyptian. The term Pharaoh in Egyptian means mighty house. The closest Hebrew translation regarding the term Pharaoh can be gleaned from the term para, meaning to plunder. In Judges chapter 5, verse 2, you read about the aspect of one who's a leader who plunders. The rulers of the Middle Kingdom applied the term Pharaoh to themselves. The pharaohs we read of in Exodus 1 is during the era of dynasty 12 to 13 of Egypt, during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. All right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. So Pharaoh inside of Egyptian means mighty house. But by the time you get to the era of the Middle Kingdom, all right, and you can check that out with Sir Alan Gardiner in his book called Egypt of the Pharaohs, they took the terminology Pharaoh, meaning mighty house of the Old Kingdom, and applied it to themselves. Most Egyptian rulers were known as Kuti, K-U-T-I in English. All right, so this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. All right, I want to emphasize the rulers of the Middle Kingdom applied the term Pharaoh to themselves. The pharaohs we read of in Exodus 1 is during the era of dynasty 12 to 13 of Egypt, during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Let's look at this slide again, brothers and sisters, where it says about Avaris. There, speaking of the Hyksos, fortified city was built over the Middle Kingdom town they had captured. So if we are saying, brothers and sisters on this channel, that the Exodus happened in the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, we can begin to see how you can correlate the aspect of what we're talking about. Next slide. Exodus chapter 2, verse 1 through 6. And there went out a man of the house of Levi, and he took a wife, a daughter of Levi. And a woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw that and when she saw that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and dubbed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off, to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. And her maidens walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. So this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. This leads into the birth of the man we call Moses. Let's go on. The river and the Hebrews. The river is the Nile River, called Yaor in Hebrew, all right, or called Iter or the Iteru in the Egyptian. One of the Hebrew children, Hebrew, were called in the Akkadian language the Kabiru, and inside of the Egyptian known as the Apiru. So what are we seeing, brothers and sisters? All right, were called in Akkadian Kabiru. You may see it with a KH in some spellings. So Hebrew, Kabiru, Apiru. And brothers and sisters, when you deal with transliterations, the B and P are interchangeable between Shemitic or Asiatic languages inside of African or Egyptian languages. You will see the transformation between the B and the P. All right? Like the figures quoted for the Sashu or Bedouins and of the Koreans who may derive their name, later extended to all Palestinians and Syrians. Immediately preceding, there is a reference to the Apiru, a much discussed term which we cannot afford to ignore. A few years ago, it was confidently asserted that these people were identical with the Hebrews of the Old Testament, but this is now denied by all but a few scholars. It is, however, generally accepted that they are to be equated with the Habiru, better Apiru, of the Amarna tablets, apparently a generic term for outcasts or bandits belonging to no fixed ethnic groups. In Egyptian texts, they appear as Asiatic prisoners employed in stone quarries. This comes from Egypt or the Pharaohs by the author Sir Alan Gardiner. All right, so let's look at this particular thing. It says later extended to all Palestinians and Syrians. The terminologies is what he's talking about, such as Habiru or Hapiru of the Amarna tablets. All right, Amarna tablets is dated to the era of the New Kingdom of Egypt. The Apiru is mentioned within that, as we spoke about before in another presentation called Hebrews in Archaeology or Israel in Archaeology on a channel called Moreh Yeshiah History Lessons. But getting back into this particular aspect here, what I wanted to point out, when you see extended to all Palestinians and Syrians, Palestinians, the Israelites would have been part of that. The word Palestine is what the Romans called the area where the Israelites was at. So this is why when we get into these kind of subjects, it is very important, brothers and sisters, to understand the etymology, the terminology, and so forth and so on, and what people were called when by what people. What people called what people at what time. That is important in order to understand this kind of aspect. All right? Let's go on to the next slide. Map of the Nile River. We discussed the Nile River before. You have Lake Victoria here in Uganda. Then you have the Blue Nile River and White Nile. This is the aspect in Ethiopia where the Nile starts. So you got the Blue Nile and the White Nile, and it flows north. All right, not south, but north. Okay, and it continues this way, and then it goes through all of the different aspects of the cataracts and so forth, and then it dumps into the Mediterranean. So the point I want to emphasize, brothers and sisters, in this is what the Israelites refer to as called Ye'or. Ye'or is what the Israelites call this, whereas the Egyptians refer to this river as the Iteru. All right, so this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. This right here is the Nile in part. All right, seen from like way up in the sky, taking the picture down. All right, so this is just something we want to point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. This part right here is where the Israelites would have been, all right, when we get into edification purposes. This is called Lower Egypt, or Tameri by many. And this is called Tamehu or Tashmehu, all right? This being Upper Egypt or the southern part of Egypt. Because because the Nile flows, all right? Sorry about that. Because the Nile flows north, the ancient Egyptians saw this as the main part and this as the lower part. All right, so this is something we want to point out. Let's go on to the next slide. Oh, I wanted to emphasize this is called Lake Tana, where the arrow is in Ethiopia. All right, you have Lake Victoria and Lake Tana. That is where the Nile River starts and then flows up. Next slide. Moses, Mesu, Moshe in linguistics. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women? that she may nurse the child for thee. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, for she said, Because I drew him out of the water. Now, brothers and sisters, it is generally understood and taught that, and the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter. When the child grew, he was already being taught about who he was as far as being Israel by his mother. You understand? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? Now, inside of the Hebrew, we see this, following with the arrow. Wayigdal hayeled, wa to be ehu, labat paro, wahi lah, labain, wa tikra shemo Moshe, wa tomer ki min hamayin, mushitihu. In Egyptian, Mesu means be born, and Mesus or ms hyphenated means child. Moses is the Egyptian transliteration of the Hebrew Moshe. So Moses' name said in Egyptian, all right, is not Thutmoses. All right, that's not what that is. All right, Thutmoses means Thot is born inside of the Egyptian thing. But what we're pointing out, brothers and sisters, in this particular regard, it says in Egyptian, Mesu means born and Mesus means child. So when you're seeing that a child was drawn from the water, this is how you get the meaning of that particular name. So his name in Egyptian would have been one meaning, and his name in Hebrew would have been another. The Pharaoh's daughter we read of in Exodus 2 is Sobeknefru, the daughter of Amenemhat III of Dynasty 12. This is what we want to point out for edification purposes. Why are we going there and singing this? Is because of this verse right here. Repeat it over here. And it says, and he, meaning Moses, became her son. So she adopted him from his biological mother. All right? And she called his name Moses and said, Because I drew him out of the water. Brothers and sisters, this right here becomes important as far as Moses in the water. And we'll get into that as we continue these presentations. Next slide. Exodus chapter 2, 11 through 15. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens. And he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him, What? And he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. There's a couple of things to point out, please, in this particular regard. It says in those days when Moses was grown that he went out among his brethren, which means that his mother at least credence to be the one to teach him who his people were. He never was recorded outside of a mistake of being known as an Egyptian. It was the people who did not know him, just as the daughters of Jethro later on who said an Egyptian. But when it says right here among his brethren, it's talking about the other Israelites. All right? It says, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So his brethren is the Hebrews, the Israelites, part of the Kabiru. All right? And he looked this way and that way. So he was checking the circumference, the area. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He stood up for his brother. He didn't do what some people do, no offense intended today. Well, I'm going to just film the cops beating somebody up, but then just put it on YouTube, and then hopefully I won't lose my job by putting this online. You understand? Like we see done today. It says that he looked this way and that way, and when he saw there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. That's called nationalism. That's what he did to protect his brother. He didn't sit there and say, well, you know, he probably did something wrong. He probably had it coming to him. He didn't come against his own brother like that. And it's another thing to point out, brothers and sisters, is this. Moses gets respect for defending his people. David got respect later on in the Israelite history for making war against the enemies of Israel. Whereas Rehoboam and Jeroboam, which is after the era of David, they don't get respect for having civil war. You don't get respect in Israel for Israel fighting Israel. Israel got respect, brothers and sisters, for fighting against Esau, for fighting against, in this particular regard, the Egyptians, for fighting against the Philistines, the Ammonites, the Moabites. You understand? The Israelites did not get respect for Judah fighting the northern kingdom and vice versa. Civil war doesn't make you gain honor. The Israelites in the tribe of Benjamin, they both essentially lost going against each other. Israelites wanting to quarrel, fight against one another, you don't get no respect for that. This is something else we want to point out for edification purposes. Israel only got respect in war when they went against their enemies, like the Edomites. Let's go on. Moses had to run away because somebody was saying, intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? So you have this particular person in verse 14 basically saying that he will be able to sell somebody out. I know what you did, like last summer kind of thing. I'm going to tell on you. Harriet Tubman's husband was noted for saying he was going to tell if she wanted to sit there and free the people. And many people record in history that Harriet Tubman did slay him. You understand? And then she did her move to get the people to freedom. All right? Moses, we'll see later on, is set up to be, on a human level, a deliverer of the people. That's important. Moses, the defender against slavery. Moses defended his people, a sign of a true leader. One who sees the oppression of his people will want to defend his people. Nat Turner, much later on, like Moses, saw his people oppressed and struck the oppressors. Nat Turner and his company killed over 50 people. In the movie Colombo, based on the Maroons in Brazil, the leader is shown killing an oppressor of his people. His name was Ganga Zumba. In the Bible, Jael in the book of Judges is stated to have killed an oppressor of her people. So this is to show you that you get love even among your own people for going against the enemies of your people. Those who go against their own people don't go down in the book of merits. Like we say as Israelites on Yom Kippur, remember us in the book of merit. Remember us in the book of forgiveness and pardon. Remember us in the book of life. Remember us in this book and that book. The people who want to go against other Israelites, what book do you think the Most High is writing your name in? See, this is something we want to point out because Moses' name is in the book forever. And he was known as going against the enemies of his people. Next slide. What you see right here on the top, because I tried to get the movie online, but it didn't work. All right. Is a clip from the movie Colombo. So you can look this up. You can pause it at this point when you're watching it later on, and then look this up right here, and you'll begin to see this actually in the movie. This right here, right? It's called Colombo. All right. Then we see this particular part right here with the man Ganga Zumba. All right. So let's see what he did and why you see this reaction on his face. Well, you're seeing a scene and pic from the movie Colombo. This is the same person as shown before, killing one who was oppressing his elder, actually, older brother, if you will, of his own people. And here on the right-hand side, you see this yet again, the man on the ground that was being beaten, and the guy where the arrow is here, where the blue undergarment is of this guy that you see on the left-hand side with the beard there. That was the oppressor getting killed by this guy here, shown here as Ganga Zumba. This guy here was being beaten by this guy here. Just as we read about Moses raising up against an oppressor of his people who was smiting his brother, a Hebrew. Next slide. Quilombo continued. It says he was killing Aroroba. All right? That's his answer to somebody. I wasn't going to let him beat him to death. And he was pointing to the guy, you understand, that was oppressed, or to the guy that was doing the oppression. I'm not going to let him. You understand? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. This man is noted in history, and this is in the 17th century AD, millennia after the era of Moses, but you're still remembered as defending your people, not going against your people. Let's go on to the next slide. Moses and the Midianites. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and filled their troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered the flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, how is it that you are come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. So the priest of Midian, all right, the land of Midian is actually in the Saudi Arabia, not in the Sinai Peninsula, by the way. It says that the shepherds came and drove them away. They were attacking females. And once again, Moses is seen standing up and helping them, meaning that he probably knew some kind of art, some kind of fighting style, and so forth and so on, as far as being able to sit there and defend those people. Moses was a defender, not an offender. Do you get the difference between defend and offend? All right? Moses was a defender, not an offender. All right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? And when it came to Reuel, their father, Reuel means in Hebrew, Reu means see or behold. El means God. Reuel means behold God. All right? That's not saying that their father-in-law or Moses' father-in-law was God. It's just showing that was the man's name. All right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. And he said unto his daughters, and where is he? And why is it that ye have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. The hospitality of Abraham, because the Midianites are part of the seed of Abraham. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses the Torah, his daughter. And she bore him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage. And they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. This is the same God that we read of in Leviticus 26. I want to take time to read that portion right now. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26. All right, we're going to start, brothers and sisters, in verse 40. All right, let's look at this. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40, and it says the following. Okay? Here we read, and if they, speaking of the Israelites, and if they confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers, with their trespass which they have trespassed against me, meaning against the Most High, and that they have also walked contrary unto me, and that I have also walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies. If then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. So in Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40 to verse 42, it says they, of the Israelites, that is, if they, being us, realize how we messed up and sinned before the Most High, and confess our iniquity. That means we have to cry out. It says, and God heard their groaning. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. Why do you think the society keep us so busy? So that way we don't have the time to even meditate and have prayer. Isaac meditated. All right. So there's nothing wrong with meditation. So the point we want to emphasize, brothers and sisters, as far as getting in tune with the Most High, they do not want that. They do not want us calling upon the higher power, the Most High power. Yah Elohim, the creator and maker of heaven and earth. You understand? It says, and God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. They don't want the Most High to have respect unto us. Next slide. Notes regarding Midian. Moses was mistaken as an Egyptian. That argument has been stated to show that he had to look like an Egyptian. Midian. Contention is the meaning of Midian. The land of Midian is in modern Saudi Arabia. Midian. The mem with the kirit, the dalet with the shawah, you join it together. Continue reading on the word, the yod with the kwamat and the nun sofit. Midian. Contention is the meaning of Midian. You see right here, this is Arabia. All right, and this is the land of Midian. So this is the area where Moses was when we read in the book of Exodus 3. Next slide. Exodus 3, verse 1 through 10. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock by the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Most High appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, while the bush is not burnt. And when Yah saw that he had turned aside to see, Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereupon thou standest is holy ground. Essentially, in a nutshell, show some respect. The place where you stand upon is holy ground. It's sacred. Everything is not all just one and the same. The Most High is beyond the borders of Israel. This was not in the land of Canaan, which later on became Israel. All right? This right here was inside of the place we call Saudi Arabia of today. All right? And when the Most High saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim, God, called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Here am I. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet. Do not bring the stuff that you walked in into the presence of the Most High. Next slide. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon Elohim. And Yah said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Yebusim, or the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherein the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So therefore, we want to point out Moses was already showing himself to be a deliverer on a human level to his people. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? Could this be the reason why the Most High looked upon him and said, this will be the man to be chosen? Because when he saw the oppression of his people, like it says in verse 9, where if the Egyptians oppressed them, he didn't say, well, I was raised among the Egyptians, these Hebrews. He didn't look down on his own people. You understand? He didn't sit there and say, well, you know what? I'm better than you because I was in the house. No, I was in the palace. That doesn't happen to me. That's not the spirit Moses had. Next slide. The Hittites, Amorites, and the Jebusites. All right. This is the land of Canaan right here. This is where these people would have been in history. All right. For the main part on the west side of the River Jordan. This is what they call Sea of Galilee, the Salt Sea. Some refer to it as the Dead Sea. Israelites more so call it the Live Sea. But this is just something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right. The Great Sea here, the Mediterranean Sea. The Hittites lived in part where the tribe of Judah later lived, as well as where Turkey of today is. Their kingdom extended all the way to southern Canaan. The Amorites, said by some to be white people, however, that is not accurate. They were called Amori in Hebrew and Amor in Egyptian, and Mor too in Sumerian, and Titmun in Akkadian. The Amorites were a thorn to the tribe of Dan in Judges chapter 1 through Judges chapter 2. Do you see the importance of etymology and who called who what? The Amorites were called Amor by the Egyptians, Mortu in Sumerian, all right, where they spoke in the aspect of written and cuneiform, and Titmun in Akkadian. The Akkadian aspect, they called them their own thing, and the Israelites called them another thing. But these people were not what you call white of today. Jebusites lived in an area where David eventually conquered and called Jerusalem or Jerusalem. All right, so this is something we just want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. Exodus chapter 3, verse 11 through 17. And Moses said unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I shall bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be the token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve Elohim upon this mountain. And Moshe said unto Elohim, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, the God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say unto me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto him, I am that I am. And he said, thus you shall say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, thus you shall say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Yaakov, has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. So we want to understand in verse 15, his name to all generations is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say unto them, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt unto the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizim and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites unto a land flowing with milk and honey. Brothers and sisters, when you look at this particular regard, we're going to explain the I am that I am soon. Let's explain this. The explanation of Shem, meaning name or fame. The word name in Hebrew is said as Shem. The same in Hebrew, Shem means fame. In Hebrew, Shem means name, renown, and fame. Numbers chapter 16, verse 2. All right, let's look at this. Yakumu, lifnei Moshe, wa anashim mibnei Yisrael kamishim umatayim, nisi eda, kuri a moed anshe Shem. And they rose up in the face of Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 men. They were princes of the congregation, the elect men of the assembly, men of renown. So when you see the arrow right here, Anshe Shem, Shem, renown, Shem, renown, Anshe, men of. Right here, Anashim, all right, meaning men. And here we see Anshe, men of. Anshe Shem, men of renown, men of renown. So the word Shem means name, renown, or fame. All right, so this is just something we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. Exodus chapter 3 and 4. And they shall hearken to thy voice, and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and shall say unto them, the Lord God of the Hebrews has met with us. And now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. And I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not by a mighty hand. And I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in the midst thereof. And after that, he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall come to pass, when you go, you shall not go out empty. But every woman shall borrow of her neighbor and of her that sojourneth in her house, jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And you shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and you shall spoil the Egyptians. Today, brothers and sisters, we refer to that as reparations in verse 22. Only a slave master's mind will sit there and think that that's stealing. Some people against the Israelites are saying, oh, that's stealing. The same thing the European government or the American government will say about black people getting reparations. So does the conscious community and the Kemetic community say this right here, that's not right. He actually killed the man and had to run away. That's murder. They'll sit there and say Nat Turner committed murder if you asking the slave master. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. So let's go and read a part of Exodus chapter 4. Exodus chapter 4, brothers and sisters. We're going to start in verse 20. Exodus chapter 4, verse 20. And it says this. And Moses took his wife and his sons and set them upon an ass. And he returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the rod of God in his hand. And the Lord said unto Moses, when thou goest to return unto Egypt, see that thou do all these wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in thy hand. But I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, thus saith Yah, Yisrael beni Bekori, beni Bekori Yisrael. Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. So, brothers and sisters, we're dealing with the aspect of the relationship between the Most High and the children of Israel. The Most High, who is the Father, claimed Israel as his son. And we are, as Israelites, to not disrespect the Father by saying we're not the son. Next slide. Exodus chapter 5, verse 1 through 5, English and Hebrew. And afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, who is Yah, that I should obey his voice and let Yisrael go? I know not Yah, neither will I let Yisrael go. And they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, and sacrifice unto the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. And the king of Egypt said unto them, wherefore do ye, Moses and Aaron, let the people from their works go? It says, get you to your burdens. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land now are many, and you make them rest from their burdens. Ain't that what they say, or is that not what they say about us as a people? These Negroes done multiplied, and now they're lazy and don't want to do nothing. They don't want to get a job. They want to sit there and live on welfare, and they want to sit around and have babies all day. That would have been similar to the complaint of the ancient Egyptians. You're not killing your sons. You want to sit there and have all these babies. And now you sitting up there just acting lazy, talking about you want to do some religious, quote unquote, sacrifice to a God that the Pharaoh doesn't know. Because just as Pharaoh didn't know who the Most High was, America does not recognize the Most High neither. So let's not wonder why we say Deuteronomy 28:68, that this is the Egypt is talking about. Next slide. Exodus chapter 5, verse 6 through 19. And Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and the officers, saying, Ye shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And the tale of the bricks, let's remember the bricks now, which they make heretofore, ye shall lay upon them. Ye shall not diminish aught thereof, for they be idle. Therefore they cry, saying, Let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let there be more work be laid upon the men, that they may labor therein, and let them not regard vain words. Vain words, taking it up to today. Don't listen to them Israelites when you even see them speaking on the corner, talking about you're the children of God. You better go in there, fill out the application and work for me, nigga. This is the similar situation that it's talking about, just in those days and times. You understand? And the taskmasters of the people went out, and their officers, and they spoke unto the people, saying, Thus saith Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Let's take it up to today's time. Politicians sent out among the people, they're going to cut the food stamps. They're going to have workfare instead of welfare. Go ye, get ye straw where you can find it. Go out there and get a job wherever you can. Get Uber. Become a messenger. Do something. Yet not aught of your work shall be diminished. So even though they charge you rent very high, then the paycheck allows even for the month to still eat comfortably, dress well. I still want my rent. It's similar to the similar situation. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt. So our people went from the south to the north. We're going to find better opportunities. We're going to sit there and make it. Someday we shall overcome. You know, this kind of aspect. To gather stubble instead of straw. So we're sitting up there going from check to check. We're sitting up there going from hand to mouth, week to week, bi-weekly, and sometimes if you're a substitute teacher, you get paid, correct me if I'm wrong, month to month. But that rent better be paid. Or you find yourself homeless, or having to shack up with somebody else, or having to sit there and pay this and that. And of course, as you know, in many of those jobs, who do they sit there and get rid of first? Our people. The men of our people. I've seen it. When they downsizing on the job, who do they sit there and get rid of first? The black man. Not a secret. I've seen it. Next slide. Continue. And the taskmasters hasted them, saying, Fulfill your work, your daily task, as when there was straw. So in other words, you keep on paying me these bills, car note, car insurance, light, gas, cell phone, this bill, that bill, and you got good old rent. Pay all of that, though you're making less. As heretofore, when you had the store, when you had the better job, I still want you to still sit there and pay that child support, nigga. This is the same kind of stuff that they was dealing with then that we're dealing with today. And the officers of the children of Israel, which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and demanded, Wherefore have ye not fulfilled your task in making brick both yesterday and today as heretofore? Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, Wherefore didst thou thus with thy servants? So these officers in verse 15 are today your Al Sharptons and your Jesse Jacksons. These are your Jamie Petersons that are set up by his people to be spokesmen for the people to sit there and report back to the master. Well, why you deal with us? We tried, boss. We tried, boss. These niggas don't want to hear us no more. Al Sharpton was told by a family to not even sit there and try to represent for them. People get tired of the cooning. You understand? People get tired of the behind kissing. You understand? This is something we want to point out. The person who is okay going against their people is the same person that is okay trying to sit there and kiss the behind of the oppressor. They are one and the same. You cannot love your enemy and love your own people. It is impossible. You cannot love your enemy and love your own people. This is why Moses had no problem saying, we shall despoil the Egyptians. A person on the coon level is like, you know, let bygones be bygones, let it go. It's all in the past. But the persons who gets their own people, they forget every oppressive thing done to their own people, but won't forgive their own brother and sister of their own people. So we have to ask, like we do in Yom Kippur, what book is the Most High inscribing our name in? Because Moses' name is left as a memory forever. I go so far to say, even in our own time, Harriet Tubman made a name with the Most High. How many coons and sellouts and sambos can we name? I don't know many that made the record, but Demark Rezi, he made a record. Nat Turner, he made a record. Harriet Tubman made a record. Robert Smalls, he made a record. Josiah Henson, he made a record. We could go so far back in the day with Yael in the scriptures, and prior to her, Moses. And after Moses was Yael, and after Yael, you had David. All the people mentioned whose name is for a memory, it says the memory of the righteous is for a blessing, but the name of the wicked shall rot. So can we do a roll call of the coons and the sambos? How many Israelites name their children Dathan and Abiram? Not too many to my knowledge. They cut off. The Most High cut off in what we call today the sambo and the coon. You understand? This is something we want to point out for edification purposes. But he said, ye are idle, ye are idle. Therefore you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go therefore now and work, for there shall no store be given you. Yet shall ye deliver the tale of bricks. Keep on bringing them bricks. I don't care how you get it. I don't care how you're going to sit there and get that rent money. I don't care if you got to fly, beg, plead, and steal. You're going to pay this rent. It's the similar premise. And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. After it was said, you shall not diminish aught of your bricks of your daily task. So when you begin to sit there and see the people looking sad and down, and you find Jesse Jackson in the Midwest being told by black males, you're in the wrong place, Jesse. You understand? It comes to a point when our people just get tired of the cooning. And the part that is text of in the book of Isaiah chapter 30, prophesy to us delusions, give us a fairy tale, that kind of aspect. You understand? Let's go on to the next slide. The mud brick pyramid, as you see there. More bricks, less straw. This right here is one of the pyramids dated to the era of the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. All right, this is the mud brick pyramid. All right, and what you see right here is where it was made from. Next slide. Exodus chapter 5, verse 20 through 6:1 in conclusion. And they met Moses and Aaron and stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, the Lord, look upon you and judge, because you have made our Savior to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants to put a sword in their hand to slay us. What's happening right here is this: the Israelites being made to have to sit there and work even harder to fill a daily quota of something, a weekly quota of something, a monthly quota, aka rent, of something, because these Israelites is up there protesting, we are the people of the Most High, standing from corner to corner, the highways and byways, teaching who the true house of Israel is. The average person does not want the Israelites teaching online or on the street. Why won't these niggas with these Sub-Zero costume looking things take that stuff off, take those strings off, take that towel wrap off your head, and sit there and be nigga like the rest of us? This is what people have actually said to me. Excuse my quotation. You got these damn Israelites out there teaching this hate stuff. You understand? And so looking at that, you're going to bring more problems to us by the oppressor. You didn't have faith in the Most High, like the woman had faith in the Most High in Exodus chapter 1. You understand? Let's go on, brothers and sisters. And Moses returned unto Yah and said, Yah, wherefore hast thou so evil entreated this people? Why is it that thou hast sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in thy name, he hath done more evil to this people, neither hast thou delivered thy people at all. And then Yah said unto Moshe, now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand, Yah Kazakwa, with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. The Most High was going to get his honor. Brothers and sisters, this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. What you're looking at here is a closer view of the mud brick pyramids. Remember, we kept on saying, remember the aspect of the brick, the brick, the brick, the brick. This is why. A source regarding the Middle Kingdom and mud brick pyramids, Dr. I.E.S. Edwards, 1987. In common with the Middle Kingdom pyramids constructed after Amenemhat II, it was built of mud brick, round a core of limestone, passages and burial chambers, and faced with limestone. Most of the facing stone was later pillaged for use in other buildings, a fate common to almost all of Egyptian pyramids. And today, the pyramid is little more than an eroded, vaguely pyramidal mountain of mud brick. And of the once magnificent mortuary temple, precinct formerly enclosed by a wall, there is little left beyond the foundation bed of compacted sand and chips and shards of limestone. So that is what became in part of some of the stuff that the Israelites built in Egypt. Next slide. Notes on the subject continue. The Middle Kingdom is one of the highest points of Egyptian history. The royal residence was moved to Egypt Tawi by the edge of the Fayum region. There was trade between Egypt and Byblos, or Byblos. The pharaohs worried about war coming to them from the east. Thus we see why the forts were built. In Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, Book 2, Chapter 7, we see that Israel built pyramids. The argument that Moses was copied from Amenemhet is from an Egyptologist named Wolf Krauss. So it was not an Egyptian thought nor a Hebrew thought that Moses was copied from an Egyptian. The Egyptians don't record that, nor do the Israelites record that. It's a European Egyptologist that said that Moses, a Hebrew, story must have been copied from an African Egyptian one. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. Remember, I said earlier, brothers and sisters, about remembering Byblos. This is why I wanted that to be remembered, because trade was done between Egypt and Byblos. That becomes important as we continue later on. Blessed be the Most High this week with health, strength, and life, internet ability for this aspect. Next slide. Conclusion regarding this portion. Shalom. The data we are talking about regarding the first chapters of Exodus is in the 15th century BCE. The 400 years we read of in Genesis 15 are the 4 generations from the immediate patriarchs of the Israelites to the time of the Exodus. That is to say, from the era of Joseph to the era of them being led into the land of Canaan by Joshua. Many scholars have dated the Exodus. Note there is an external record called Epira of the Egyptian people speaking of escape of slaves. Did we jump the gun? Oops. Perhaps. But let's go on. In 1446 BCE, and some even to 1290 BCE. However, the dating as 1492 or 1491 BCE is closer to the mark. The pharaoh of the oppression we read in Exodus is more than one pharaoh, and the pharaoh of the Exodus, Neferhotep the first, hasn't been found. The tomb of Neferhotep the first hasn't been found. Did I jump the gun to the other presentations in this conclusion? No, brothers and sisters. This conclusion leads you into the introduction for the next teaching that is scheduled to be this week, Wednesday, the 13th of June on this channel, 7:30 p.m. Most High bless if it be his will. Shalom. The book for further information on the subject. I can be reached at 908-587-4841. I can be reached at kashubhut@gmail.com. If one wants the book by PayPal, one can log into PayPal and go to my email, hkashub@yahoo.com, and then go to friends and family and pay that way. The book costs $20 and will be mailed the day after it is ordered. One will have to text me one's mailing address. Text me at the number here if you're interested in this book right here. If one cares to use Cash App, one can send to the number 908-587-4841 or to Cash Card Kashub on Cash App. Text or call first. Thank you. If one cares to use Western Union, when mailing the book, take off the extra fee that Western Union charges. So you only pay the exact amount for the book, $20. Call or text before using Western Union. Western Union may charge you a fee if you want to use it that way. But if Western Union is doing that, I will reimburse that when the book is being sent to you. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? Giving honor and praise unto the Most High. Shalom.